Hello, it's Matt Chapman, and I have the pleasure of two friends with me today, Marcus Plush and Larry McAlister. Marcus is the Senior Director of Human Resources Asia Pacific at NetApp, and Larry is the Global Head of Talent Management. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Matt. Yeah, appreciate it.
So I guess to start off with, the theme of HR technology and really, the fact that we're in this golden age now where technology is both enriching, but potentially complicating HR. And Larry, I know this is particularly a pet topic for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been talking to people about we're in the golden age of HR technology. Technology for HR has caught up, and many of these small companies are building AI tools that are just bolting on to these old stodgy HR resources. So if you think about agility in the marketplace, agility in your career, we now have ability to measure in the market who's matching up to your jobs and who can match up to your jobs in the future. 70% is the new 100%, and technology is going to help us understand what that is. And then on the back end, matching up to jobs internally, real actual jobs where you can say, I want to be this in 10 years. Here's the next 2 or 3 jobs you should take. Here's the skills you need to build on. Here's a mentor in the company you can match up to. Here's a gig you can tie to. So the reality of it, of AI helping you understand it and then having real, genuine quarterly conversations with your manager is so much more authentic now and so much more real, as opposed to when we were coming up and career paths were in a binder, on the shelf, and they didn't really mean anything. Now it's an actual deliverable, and we're excited to build that out this year.
No, it's really, really exciting. Marcus, any comments?
Yeah, from our side, I mean, there's so much cool stuff going on. Our ability in frontline HR to keep across all the tech is really tough. So thankfully, we've got, Larry and his team kind of setting the direction. My job's help making that real and providing a bit of a platform to say, this is what the need is, this is what the business is doing, and then how do we gain the insights and make people get traction with this sort of stuff? And we've got some great tools that are starting to launch. As Larry said, the ability to create gigs and actually generate experiences for employees rather than roles. The experiences are the key thing. So we can actually map, potential jobs that people want to take up and start pulling the experiences out of those jobs and giving them to people before they're ready for the job. Or if that role's not available, they get the experiences. So when it does come up, they move straight in. So yeah, it's a really, really great time. Heaps of opportunity for us to really kind of anchor in on these tools. And the business is actually hungry for them.
So I really feel your optimism, and I guess it's something that is coming through in quite a number of discussions I'm having with HR leaders around the world. And Larry, I think before we were talking about the different cycles, obviously, of this year and where we sit around emotion, and I guess the need to create that spark.
Yeah, no, I think, we had a hierarchy of needs where everyone started out at the bottom, fear of my job, fear of getting sick, fear for my family. And that's what a lot of the feedback we're getting from surveys and coaching is, that's where people's heads were. Then it moved into, all right, I'm past that. I want to work at my career again, but I'm now starting to feel fatigued. And I think there's this idea of, I still have a fogginess of what I think my next step would be or what it's going to look like in the future. And we've been trying to say, there is no date, there is no vaccine, right? There's no flipping of the switch. I want you to do the best work of your career at NetApp from your kitchen table starting today. And give them a sense of optimism with these new tools. We're doing a career week next week for all employees to hit it from many different ways, to think about growth mindset, how you can be in control of your career. And there is a tomorrow, right? There is a future. You can still do great work. It's just going to feel a little different.
So I find it really interesting when we talk about the near term and just walking each day, one day at a time, or each week or month. And at the same time, we also want to think long range as well. How do we get that juxtaposition?
So for me, and then I'll have Marcus add on because he's on the ground more than I am. I think the biggest mindset that we're working on now is, there's not going to be everyone back in the office the way it always was. So it's getting to the internal reality that I have to think differently about how I'm going to work now. Only 9% of the people in our survey internally said they want to go back to work as the primary way to do it. The big majority was some kind of hybrid way. So just having people picture, we'll be in a hybrid for a while, that's going to be okay. But how do we build on the culture, build on the leadership, and build on your ability to drive your career in a hybrid environment? That's the short-term reality people got to get their head around, I think.
Marcus?
Yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting journey. I mean, we all kind of launched into this whole COVID lockdown thing, thinking it was probably going to be 2 or 3 months, and we're now, nearly a year down the path. We connected like mad. We used to have this, we're socially distant but virtually close kind of philosophy, and we had connections going bonkers. What's actually shifted, interestingly enough, is we've now had to shift to making those connections actually more personal. Because those personal contacts have kind of fallen a little bit out to the wayside, because a lot of our connections are through kind of operating cadence and mechanisms in the business. So actually resetting the relationships and resetting the personal connections on this virtual space has been really interesting. And that's a big focus for the leadership now, because that continues to have trust with the teams. It continues to have them believe that we're in it for the right reasons and that we're helping them. And then on top of that, we try and connect them through different activities and different tools and different tool sets. So it's been kind of an interesting journey for us. As Larry said, I mean, barely 10% of the teams are keen to come back 100%. Every time we open an office, we're lucky to get 10% in at any day, which is showing that people have slowly adapted to it. And as I said, our big task now is how do we keep the culture and that connection alive?
Yeah. Now it's interesting because you're both sitting in different locations. I should have added, Marcus, you're in Singapore, and Larry, you're in California. Any cultural aspects that you see different across geographies?
For us, just keep an eye on which offices are opening in which parts of the country and how do people respond to that. And I think, like Marcus said, we opened Sunnyvale, or we're about to, and said, how many people want to come back? And only like 20 people signed up that they'd want to volunteer, and no one came in. So I think it's the balance of cultural ways of people connecting to the office. I think in India, it's a different view of how they want to come back to the office. So it's gauging, where you live, what your attitude is. If you have small kids, I think there's some humanness across the world that is pretty consistent. But different places that you live, I think, have some impact on your decision making.
Yes, from a regional perspective, I mean, we had kind of a mixed bag, because you've got some of those, you have cultures like Japan or countries like Japan where people really struggled to work from home to start with. And now they've become so used to it and they've found their rhythm that actually we're having difficulty pulling them back into the office. They've kind of found their space. Interestingly enough, vice versa, you had kind of the Australian population, which are kind of social and love to be there. They're pushing like mad to get back in, but it's about that personal relationship piece and the way in which they make decisions and the collegiacy. So it's been a real mixed bag for us across the region. The interesting bit, I think, when you step back and look at it, is we've had to continually adjust and flex the way in which we're working with the different teams, and the way in which we're kind of setting some of the expectations around who comes in and who doesn't, and how we make sure people feel they've got the freedom to make the decision on what working style works best for them.
I just want to add on to that, Marcus, this idea of no one saying, I want to go back to the office to work. Everyone's saying, I want to go back to the office to see my people and interact and maybe do a brainstorm. It's not, we have proven, and I think we knew it before COVID, people can work from their home. We knew it. We just didn't want to admit it. So now we've proven it, but the interaction, the social interaction, the brainstorming, I just want to see someone's eyes. I think that's the big pull to bring people in generally.
The question I want to ask you both is, we talked about HR technology at the start of this discussion, but one of the things, and Marcus, you know this, I mean, I've been working virtually for 12 years. Chapman CG was built virtually with people, not offices. So we had a bit of a flying start to this, but there's a real need to use technology to optimize efficiency and to use technology to set boundaries so that you can actually get your best work done. How is NetApp within the company? How are you supporting focus and the navigation of people not sort of burning themselves out by being so connected?
I guess we're seeing it real, firsthand. And I think what we've needed to do is actually reset the expectations with the leadership team. And what we've spent a lot of time doing is getting the leaders show up a little bit differently. It's really easy, and at the start of this process, or start of this whole COVID working arrangement, we just loaded diaries with meetings. So every half an hour, and people were kind of smashing through anything from 8 to 12 meetings a day and just exhausted. So we've had to reset. Actually, you don't need to be doing 8 to 12 meetings a day. People need to build time into their diaries. We've put a lot more, we've really encouraged people changing the workspace. So having breaks. We've had, virtual yoga sessions. We've had, done all the virtual drinks. We're really trying to force the behaviours differently around. It doesn't necessarily need to be a Zoom call as well. It can just be a quick, hey, jump on a phone call with them, call someone, WhatsApp them, message. So we're trying to change the practices so people aren't just sitting in front of their computers all day. Also encouraging a lot of the get away from your desk, shut off. We've had wellness days. It's been really interesting. I mean, one of the initiatives was to have kind of every second or third month, we have a day in the diary where the company just shuts down. Now, obviously, you'll never be able to shut down 100%, but when we pushed it out, there was a huge amount of resistance from leaders. Now, the uptake is huge. People really value those days. They value the time away from the computer. They value being able to have the rest of the company switched off so they're not going to come back to their computer the next day and find 3,000 emails. The other part has also been, we have no meeting days. And again, we got a huge amount of pushback from it, but as soon as we found the rhythm and people built the muscle around it, it was hugely productive because people could work at their own pace. They could do all their own stuff. They didn't feel obliged to be, sitting down and working on this activity or that activity. They were getting their own work done. So there are a couple of the things that have kind of really changed around the last couple of months.
I think the next big step, or what my fear is, 50 years ago or whatever, women's barrier into the workplace was a big fear. And then women leaving the workforce to have kids, missing that time, and then not catching up with salary, or just general bias why they don't have the right salary. I'm fearing we're about to hit another wave of that, where the onslaught of work and home with kids not being in school, you may have elder care, is going to force some people or to make a decision that I have to leave the workforce at this point. And what can we do to make that, like, what is the biggest soft spot or persona I have to try to cater to? It's like a single parent or a single mom at home with kids. And what can we do to make that as easy or flexible as possible, different than we do now? Like, from 3 to 5, I will take no meetings because I have to, be with my kids. And that's when we're doing dinner or whatever. Like, that kind of flexibility is going to have to be the next big wave. Our first wave was don't be on the call all day. The second wave is we work around the clock in a much different way and in a much more independent way, I think, than we've had to in the past.
Larry, Marcus, I really appreciate your insights. Thanks for your time.